All right, round 3. We're going to talk about more stuff because earlier I gave a really shit description of the ability to extrapolate wisdom from like your fears and your doubts and insecurity and all that stuff and have them work for you rather than against you. And I didn't really give a good description of what that meant, so I'm going to do that now. So when you do the stuff that we talked about in the other 2 videos, and you find yourself a good direction, a direction that you find worthwhile and satisfying to go in, there are going to be obstacles. There just are. There's going to be internal obstacles and there's going to be external obstacles, and you need to know how to deal with those. Like the external obstacles are pretty easy to deal with. You know, like for me, in order to start doing all this, YouTube stuff, I needed to buy a microphone and I needed to buy a camera and I needed to set up my office in some kind of vaguely aesthetically pleasing manner. But then there's also the internal stuff. And there's a lot of different ways to deal with the internal stuff, but I'm going to teach you the stuff that works really, really good for me. So like it if you don't if you don't. So as you figure out which direction you want to go, inevitably there's going to be fears and doubts and insecurities and all kinds of reasons to not continue down the path. That's just inevitable. The question is, how do you relate to them? Do you relate to them as these like god-awful things that are just going to be there that you have to like either like surrender to and submit to and get beaten by, or you have to just like grit your fucking teeth and white knuckle through it? Or are you going to look at it as a potential source of strength? And that's what I want to offer for you today. So let's break down. I'm going to give you a few examples of some of the most common things that get in people's way. Things like I'm afraid of rejection, things like I'm afraid of failure, things like I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. Like those are damn near universal. Like I don't know that many people that don't have at least one of those. And so we can go into those and I can walk you through the process of actually extracting the wisdom out of it. So let's look at failure first, right? So let's say you're afraid of failure. I'm afraid of failure. Why are you afraid of failure? What do you think's going to happen if you fail? What do you think it'll mean about you if you fail? You know? And so there's actually a lot here, and I'm going to do my best, but this is a really complicated thing. That's why I created a course so that I could actually teach all of this. So I'm going to do my best to make this video useful on its own. So if you can't join the course, that this will still be good enough. But, you just have to start asking questions, like, okay, what happens if I do fail? And you're going to get a series of answers. Either it means that, you're a piece of shit and no one will ever love you and you can never achieve your dreams or some stuff. And if you get really weird answers like that, then you keep asking. It's like, okay, like I'm never going to achieve my dreams. Why is that? Why would failing at one thing mean I'll never achieve my dreams? That doesn't quite make sense. Why would that be? Or failure means I'm a piece of shit. Why? Why does failure mean that? And just keep digging. And more often than not, you're going to find out that there aren't really satisfying answers and you can just let the whole thing go. But if you ask what happens if I fail and you come up against a good answer, then you deal with it, because there are times that failure will have negative consequences, like potentially catastrophic consequences, like if there are kids involved, or if there's money involved, your financial future, or other people in general, like there's potential for catastrophic downfalls if you fail too big. And the thing about that is just like cowering from the fear of failure is never going to let you address that. You're either going to have to say, you know what, the risks are too big, even though I haven't necessarily quantified them, so I'm not going to do the thing because I could fail. Or you end up saying, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway, and not really taking a good look at how you could fall or how you could fail, and then you just recklessly go into the thing, and then who knows what happens. And I've done both of those. So what I learned as a happy middle ground to deal with that is like, okay, what happens if I do fail? Are there real world consequences? Can I make a plan for those? Can I plan for my potential failure? Can I work the potential for failure into my plan? And if I can, what I often find is that the part of me that was worried about that thing relaxes. Because any part of us that's sending like a doubt or a fear or a worry or concern or anything like that, it's just trying to get us to take it seriously. Because it's like, oh my God, if I fail, then I could, like, as example, like I've been wanting to quit my job so I could coach all the time. And it's like, dang, if I do that before I really have gotten certain things down and then I fail, then that could really fuck me. I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't eat. I would screw my roommate out of, having someone to pay rent in the house. And there's all these things. And so I have to be like, okay, let me plan for those. Let me make sure that I've worked those into my plan so that I don't screw my friends, right? And that's really, really good. And then there's the other side where it's like, oh, if I fail, then I'm worthless. And if I fail, then it means all these things about me. And it's silly to me because I think, like, if I fail, I'm worthless? Like, I don't know about that. That doesn't seem to make any sense. They're not even correlated. And so when I really, really think about it, it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense, and I can let it go. But more often than not, it's the inability to ask these questions in the first place that keeps us stuck. And I know there's more to this. I'm hoping this will help. There's more to this, but I'm attempting to explain it as best as I can in a short amount of time. So now, like, failure is the easiest one to describe, and rejection is super easy to describe as well. Because failure of rejection, it's really cool, is a lot of the times a barrier to having a really good life. And if you watch my old videos, you probably heard me say this before. So it's like, let's extract the wisdom from the fear of rejection, right? What happens if I get rejected? Depends on the thing. If I get rejected from a job, then it's like that could potentially have downsides, It's like, okay, well, how do I plan for that? How do I plan for the potential of failure and, the potential of rejection, and what can I do to potentially steer myself away from rejection? Like, how can I put myself together? Can I meditate before I go? Can I rehearse? Can I do all kinds of things to improve my odds because I'm afraid that I may get rejected? Really good question to ask. And also, like, let's say it's like a date or something like that. You say, okay, what happens if I get rejected? And it's like, well, nothing, really nothing. At that point, it's a question of, like, was I myself? And it's like, okay, well, how can I be so myself that even if I get rejected, it won't matter? I know that's a tall order, but it takes a little bit of a work to get there. But I'm just trying to get you the broad idea of how to extrapolate the wisdom. And it's just, you get curious about it. And in order to get curious about something, you have to accept something as inherently valid. Not correct, but valid. Like, the fact that you're afraid of rejection is a valid way to look at the world, because you do look at the world that way. It has to be valid because it exists. It's not necessarily correct, but it's inherently valid. And when you can look at yourself that way, then you can say, all right, this is a valid way of looking at the world. I have a reason for looking at the world this way. Let me understand my reason. As I pick it apart and try to understand why I'm thinking what I'm thinking and where I created all these ideas, it's either going to fall apart on its own because it doesn't make any sense and I'm going to laugh at the whole thing, or I'm going to learn about how I could improve my situation. And this part of me that used to be this, like, horrible, domineering, terrible thing that used to really fuck with me is now an ally. Because when it speaks up, I go, hey, do you have something valuable to say, or are you just freaking out about nothing? And if you're freaking out about nothing, I'm going to let it go and move on with my life. But if you have something valuable to say, then I'm going to listen, and I'm going to implement it, and I'm going to do a really good job. And that's incredibly valuable because that's where self-respect comes from. Like, I hear people talking about self-worth and stuff a lot of the time, and I think people relate to self-worth as this thing that you just convince yourself of over time. And I don't think that's how it works at all. I don't think you just be like, oh, I'm, a super saiyan silver goddess of light and yumminess, like I hear people say. You could say that all you want, and I'm not sure you'd ever start to believe it. But when you look at the things you don't want to look at, and you extract the wisdom from it, and you prove to those parts of yourself that you've ignored and maybe been mean to and bullied and treated like they were this inconvenience, when you can take a look at those parts of yourself and treat them honestly with care and give a shit about what they have to say and take care of them and implement the wisdom that they offer, then those parts of you begin to look at you, and you begin to look at you as someone who listens. You begin to look at yourself as someone who gives a shit. You begin to look at yourself as someone who can be trusted and relied upon, and someone who will do the right thing when it's required. and someone who will look at the difficult things and deal with them like straightforwardly and just be an upstanding person. When you prove that to yourself by action over and over and over again, you start to respect yourself. And as far as I'm concerned, that's better than some hollow, like, I'm a fucking goddess rhetoric that you say to your, I don't know, I'm saying goddess, but like, whatever your rhetoric is, like, whatever you look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself over and over and over again that you kind of believe but kind of don't. Self-respect is a substantial and sustainable way to prove to yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are those things. And it takes work, and it takes courage, and attempting to convince yourself of stuff is way easier, but it's unsustainable, and it's not going to be as deep as it potentially could be. So I really want to encourage you to take as much as you can from what I've said here, because all you have to do is start asking questions. If I'm afraid of failure, if I'm afraid of rejection, like, why? Are there good reasons? Or are the reasons that I'm finding nonsense? And just because you find nonsense doesn't mean you're going to be able to let it go immediately. You may be able to just deal with that part of yourself. Be like, wow, like, you really think that if you fail, you're done. Like, wow, that's a hell of a thought. And then you can have compassion for yourself and think about how much you must have been hurt in order to form that idea in the first place. And take a step back and treat yourself like a friend and be like, God damn, how did I get here? Like, I must really be hurt. Like, that's a hell of a thing. And what do I need? How can I take care of myself? How can I prove to myself that that isn't true? And when you take yourself that seriously, and when you treat yourself like you would a really good friend that you genuinely care about, when you start doing those things, like, I can't even tell you how much of a turning point it becomes. When you embody the truth that you can be trusted and that you're worthwhile and that you do what you care about and you do what you say, and even if something is difficult, you look at it anyway and you take what you can from it and try to make the world better, try to make yourself better. Like, there's just, if you think about the baseline of how generally people relate to themselves, it's just kind of like not really all that important and not really all that worthwhile and not really all that desirable and all these different ideas that we have about ourselves. When you take a look at the baseline and then you compare it to this, it's like, fuck, like, do the thing, like, do the work, pay attention to yourself, see what you can learn. And as you do that, like we talked about before, you're going to get that, like, exponential upward growth, because you're going to say, wow, like, I can be trusted. I'm someone that cares because you did the thing. And then because you did the thing, you start to identify as that. And because you identify with that, you do the thing and you grow. And it's just, God damn. And so you get an idea of where you want to go, like we talked about in one of the other videos. I don't remember which one. And then you start walking in that direction, and you become aware of all these things that are going to get in your way of having it. And then if you apply the steps that I just talked about, then you can move those things out of the way, but not only move the obstacles out of the way, take the part of yourself that created the obstacle in the first place and have it be an ally that you can listen to and actually, like, work with and cooperate with, and you just get stronger. Like, it's fucking awesome. So like I said, this is a broad overview. In order for me to start doing this stuff, I pretty much only learned what I'm telling you now. This was what I learned to be able to start this practice. So this should be enough for you to be able to do it if you really have a strong desire. But if you want to go much quicker, then you can join my course starting on July 30th. I'm going to be walking you through all of this. I'm going to be teaching you all the ins and outs that I couldn't quite cover. You're going to have an opportunity to get coached by me and ask questions and make sure that this is really yours and you're embodying the whole thing. And I'm making sure that it's sustainable and you can reference it and use this for any area of your life pretty much forever. So I'm here to fucking support you. And if you have any questions or comments or anything, please reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you about, any of this that didn't make sense or any of it that did make sense and you want to clarify some of it or any of that shit. Just reach out to me because I want to help. All right. Well, thank you for being here. You stuck around for 15 minutes. That's a hell of a thing. I love you, and I will see you next time.